for all the verses that contain the word rasool in it. Ra, Sin, Wow, Lam. And so we're going to search the entire book, the entire Quran, for all the verses that contain the word rasool in it. And what we find is 215 verses right here contain the word rasool in it. Now we're going to search within that result the number of verses that contain all the letters of Rashad Khalifa's name within that 215. So we're going to start with the letter Ra. And because the word Rasul is already in those 215 verses, the number of verses that contain the word Ra by default will stay 215. So now we're going to search within that result as well the next letter of Rashad's name, Sheen. We see that that number dropped to 63. Aleph. Almost all verses have an Aleph, so that number is going to stay 63. Dad. 51 verses currently have these letters of Rashad's name. Let's continue with his name, Khalifa. We see that number is now 20 verses. Yeah. And Fa. And Tamarbuta. So 19 verses. So again, notice the specificity of our findings. We're looking for all the verses that contain the word Rasul in it. And within those verses, we're looking for all of those verses that contain all the letters of Rashad Khalifa's name in it. And the number of those verses is 19 of all numbers. Now, as you know, Rashad Khalifa is the messenger of God who discovered code 19. And so it's interesting that within God's Quran, the number of verses that contain the word Rasul, that also have all the letters of his name, is also 19. It's a major, major sign from God. And what's even more impressive, what's even more interesting, is what we have here is we have the order of the verses that contain of those 19 verses. And also here's the translation of that order. The first verse of those 19 that contain the word Rasul and all the letters of Rashad Khalifa is verse 381 of all verses. This is the verse that prophesizes Rashad's messengership. So now we're going to look at the list of verses. I'm just going to scroll through them, God willing, so you see which ones they are. So these are the 19 verses that contain the word Rasul and all the letters of Rashad's name. And miraculously, the first of these 19, I want to emphasize that this is God's Quran. We did not choose the book. Why would it be 19 of all verses within God's Quran that has this? It's a major miracle, a major sign from God. Another one to add to the list of miracles that prove Rashad's messengership. And this miracle gets even more impressive when we go ahead and do a similar search as before, Ra, Sin, Wow, Lam, so Rasul, but instead we search the entire Quran for all the roots of Rasul within it. What we find is 429 verses contain a word with the root Rasul in it. And so we're going to search within those 429, God willing, and we're going to search for all of the verses that contain all of the verses of those 429 that contain all the letters of Rashad Khalifa in it. So we'll start with the letter Ra. And again, because Rasul already has the letter Ra, we should expect all of them to have the letter Ra in it, so it's going to remain 429. Sheen. So we see that number drops to 128. Aleph. Almost all verses have an Aleph, so that's going to stay 128. Dal, Kha, Lam. Yeah, Fa, Ta Marbuta. So that number is 38, which is 19 times 2. I want to emphasize that these 38 verses include the 19 verses we calculated earlier because it is the root of Rasul, which includes the word Rasul itself by default. So that means it is an additional 19 verses. So this serves as further indication, further proof that God did this deliberately as a sign for us. So 19 verses of the whole Quran have the word Rasul in it and all the letters of Rashad Khalifa. And an additional 19 verses in the whole Quran have a root word Rasul, excluding the word Rasul itself, and all the letters of Rashad Khalifa. So I want to again emphasize the gravity and specificity of this finding and how it shows deliberate intent by God. This is God's Quran. Why should it be 19 verses of all numbers that contain the word Rasul in it and all the letters of Rashad Khalifa's name? Why should the first of these 19 verses be verse 381 of all verses? The verse that prophesies Rashad's messengership. The verse that talks about a messenger who will come to confirm the scriptures of the prophets. A messenger who will come to confirm the Quran, a scripture given to Prophet Muhammad, which is exactly what Rashad Khalifa did by discovering Code 19, a miracle that proves the Quran is authored by God. And so he confirmed the Quran as that verse says. Why should 381 be the first of those 19 verses? This finding is extremely impressive and is highly specific. We searched within verses that have the word Rasul in it and found 19 of them, of all numbers, having all the letters of Rashad Khalifa, with the first one being the very verse that prophesizes his messengership. This is God's Quran that has this, and this provides further proof that Rashad Khalifa is indeed a messenger from God.